Hi, this is Ron Tanner from House Love, and today we're going to talk about patching plaster walls in an old house. And these are walls that are made of lath and plaster. Now, we've received a lot of emails from readers over the last year asking for this advice, and so we're going to give you some tips and pointers. This is not high-end plaster work. This is very basic stuff. Anybody can do it. And we're going to start with very simple tools. A stiff trowel, short, we're going to mix with this, and a fairly stiff, larger trowel we're going to apply with this, like so. Also, you'll need a drill, 1.5-inch sheetrock screws, some scrap sheetrock, also small spray bottle, and small is important, small mixing bucket for your plaster, and a bag of patching plaster. So let's get started. Whenever you strip wallpaper from an old wall, the wall is going to be pitted. There'll be spalling, there'll be some disintegrated plaster. Also, you will have punched holes in the wall for electrical lines, outlets, switches, and these big holes you need to patch with sheetrock. That's the easiest way to do it. And sheetrock comes in 4 thicknesses, 1/4 inch to 5/8 inch. I'm using 1/2 inch and 3/8 inch. And that's usually good enough for patching. Now let's cut this stuff. You need a straight edge and also a razor knife. And we're going to cut a big piece off first because it's easy to cut from side to side, from edge to edge. I'm going to use a straight edge and a razor knife or box cutter. All we're doing is slicing through the paper. We're not trying to slice through the entire piece of plaster. And we're going to punch it in the back like that to break the seal. And then we're going to slice the back side, again, only through the paper, and the sheetrock separates easily. Let's do that again. I need the piece on the right, a little piece from a bigger piece. So again, straight edge, use your razor cutter. All we're doing is cutting through the paper, and then we're going to punch it in the back like so, and razor knife again, just down the seam, and you have your piece of patch sheetrock. Now let's put this in place. All we need are a couple of those sheetrock screws, and all I'm doing with the sheetrock here in this patch is putting in place. Just 2 sheetrock screws will do. And when you screw that sheetrock screw down, you want to break the paper. You just want to have that head just below the paper so that it's depressed a bit, and the plaster will fill that in. On the left side, I'm going to look for a piece of lath, and I'm going to miss it on the first try, but I'm going to get it on the second. Again, we're just putting this patch in place. The plaster itself is going to make this firm and strong, not the sheetrock screws. Now let's talk about the plaster. Do not get the plastic buckets of spackling. That's too weak. It's not strong enough. You want the stuff that comes powdered in a big bag. It's called joint compound. It comes in various grades. And what we want is the one that sets up in 20 minutes. And you'll see the 20 there. You can get stuff that sets up as quickly as 5, as long as 60, but 20 minutes gives us enough time. Let's talk about mixing this plaster. I'm using about half a finger worth, maybe half an inch. Follow the instructions on the bag. I just do it by feel now because I've done it so much. But notice that a little water goes a long way. This water keeps absorbing the plaster again and again and again. So you're going to see me add a lot of plaster to this water. Now, if the mix is too loose, too wet, it will be really messy, really hard to work with, and it won't set up well. It won't be very strong. If it's too dry, too thick, it will dry too quickly, and if it dries too quickly, your plaster will crack. So we're trying to get it just the right consistency, and the right consistency is kind of like pudding. We've got to get all the lumps and bumps out of it. So you want to mix it really well. And you'll see that the mix that I have here is kind of like pudding, and I don't want it any wetter than this. Sometimes I mix it a little drier if I want it to dry a little more quickly. If you want your plaster to dry less quickly, you can mix it with cold water. That will slow down the setup time. Let's return to the patch. Notice the first thing I'm going to do is spritz the area with the small spray bottle. You got to keep your work area moist, because otherwise if the wall and the patch are too dry, they will absorb the moisture from your wet plaster, and your plaster will dry too quickly and it will crack. So we want to keep that spray bottle handy, and it will make your work go a lot more quickly also. We use a small spray bottle instead of a large one because they're easy to handle, but also the large ones break because they're too bottom heavy and the top often breaks off. As you see here, I am filling in the deep gashes. I'm not combing over the patch yet. The main thing I want to do here is just get the patch set up. It's really easy work at this point. It's nothing big to it. The main thing is I want to keep everything flush with the wall. So filling in the deep parts. The primary thing you need to know about patching walls: one time will not do it. You're going to have to do this like 4 times. You're going to have to go over this 4 times. So all I'm doing now is just doing the base work. And now I'm working away from the patch to fill in the rest of the seam and the big cracks. That's what I'm going to do. Then I'm going to let this dry. It sets up in 20 minutes, but I'm going to give it like 2 hours to dry. Then I'm going to come back and I'm going to do this again, working it again. And then I'm going to let it dry overnight, and I'm going to do it one more time, and then I'm going to finish plaster. So it's going to take me 4 times to do this wall right. 4 times, because plaster has to dry. It has to cure a little bit before you can work over it again. Otherwise, if you try to do it all at once, the plaster is going to be too moist, too deeply, and it will crack. And you're going to have to do it all over again. So that's why we've got to do it in layers and increments over time. I'm coming back now, like 2 hours later. It's fairly dry. It's not completely dry, but it's dry enough for me to work on. So now I'm filling in again those deep gashes. I'm going to try to get the base work done. Notice I keep using my spray bottle. That helps you work it a little bit better. I'm doing it really firmly. Notice my strokes are really firmly because, again, I want to keep it flush with the wall. I don't want any buildup on the wall. Right now it's all about filling in all the deep parts. Now the next day, I'm going to come back and I'm just going to scrape any high parts off just with my trowel. I'm just going to go through and scrape any high parts off. And then I'm going to spritz it again. And then I'm going to come in with some more plaster. Now this time, I am now flush with the wall, or almost flush with the wall, and I'm going to try to blend the patch into the wall. So we use our spritz bottle. We make sure our plaster is really well mixed. And notice that it's not runny. This is it's like a paste. And I use very firm strokes. Now notice that you're going to get a line, and the way to keep the lines from occurring, a number of things. First of all, keep your trowel clean. Usually you get a line because there's too much plaster on your trowel and it gushes out. Also, watch that there's no grit on your trowel. So keep your trowel clean. You can also, with a clean trowel, just spritz it with spray bottle like this, and that will help you smooth out the plaster. Takes a little practice to do this, but it's like smoothing out icing on a cake. You keep on doing it. Now, as you see here, the patch is looking pretty good. And now I'm going to let this part dry again for a long time, maybe 4 hours or so, and then I'll go over it one more time with some finished plaster. This is the finished plaster I use. Comes in buckets. It's pre-mixed and ready to use. This one's called joint compound. If it's in a smaller bucket, it might be called spackling. It's a light plaster. It takes a while to dry. It's also pretty wet plaster. I mean, it takes a good while for this to dry. And so it's only used for light applications. I use it for finish work. Because it's pre-mixed, it's really smooth, it's without any flaws, and it gives you a great result in the end. After you have finished your final coat, let it dry, ideally overnight, and then come back and just take your trowel and gently scrape over the wall to make sure you get all the nibs and nubs and ridges out. There will always be a few of those. And then get the finest sandpaper, 220 grit, very lightly go over the wall. Maybe one swipe in each area, just very lightly. And again, you're just getting out any of those little imperfections. Finally, take a damp cloth, not a wet cloth, a damp cloth, and gently rub over the wall. And rub in one direction. You're just getting up the plaster dust in preparation for painting. You have to prime your plaster before painting it. If you do not prime your plaster will soak up your top coat and give you a very bad result. Also, your top coat might pull up 1 or 2 layers of plaster. So I use a heavy-duty primer, something like Kills, and I just roll over my plaster patches one time. That's all it takes, just one roll of heavy-duty primer, and you're good to go. Let it dry a couple of hours, and you can top coat it. Before I leave you, let me give you a few tips. Number 1, if you're working around an electrical outlet, you need to tape that up because you're going to be spritzing that area with your spray bottle and you don't want to short out that outlet. Number 2, you need to reinforce some of your cutouts. If you've cut into the lathe, you're going to have some loose lathe. So the first thing to do is take some old lathe that extends about 2 inches beyond your cutout on either end. Fit that lathe behind your cutout, and what you're going to do is you're going to drill into the sturdy lathes, into the lathes that are not loose, above it and below it, just 2 screws. So you're just pulling in that lathe against the loose lathes so that you now have a very firm support there for those loose lathes. Number 3, you can also reinforce a cutout by installing a piece of sheetrock behind that cutout, similar to the way we installed the loose piece of lath behind the cutout. All you're doing again is drilling into the sturdy lath on the top and bottom of the cutout, above and below the cutout. So you're just fitting that sheetrock behind the cutout with 2 screws, and then you can insert another piece of sheetrock over that and then patch it up. So let's review the whole process one more time. When I'm working on a wall, I work fairly quickly. I just take a rough piece of sheetrock and I'm just going to cut it roughly to fit. And we're doing the same process we did before. You know, you're slicing through the paper on one side, bumping the back, like so. It's slicing here, bump it to break the seal, and slice the back side. So I'm just going to fit it in here as best I can. The main thing is I just want to keep the plaster from falling into this huge hole. So this sheetrock's going to give me some support here. And don't be afraid to, chew into the plaster. All of this work here is going to be reinforced with our new layers of plaster. So, if you need to chew away at the wall, go ahead. And then once we have it in place, we're going to screw it down. Don't forget, when we're inserting the sheetrock screws, we've got to perforate the paper. The head of the sheetrock screw has to go below the surface of the paper so that it will be flush once we get the plaster down. And then once this is in place, we're going to spritz the work area so that the work area does not absorb the moisture from the plaster and gives the plaster time to dry and cure. Now this first base coat's just mainly getting those huge gaps. And notice I've got this big old hole there I'm going to have to take care of a little bit later. I'm going to let this dry overnight, but usually I let it dry 2 to 4 hours, and that might be enough time to work on another layer. So overnight I'm going to let this one dry. I'm going to come back, spritz the work area again, and apply a little bit of thicker coat here. What I do when I'm working on a big room is that I'll let the plaster in my bucket get a little stiff. Just as it's like 5 minutes away from getting really stiff, I'm going to use it for the big patches, for these holes here. And the plaster is really going to stick in there. Then I'll come back another 4 hours or so and do a third coat. And this might be the last coat. Sometimes I need 3, sometimes I need 4. If I need a 4th coat, I'll use the finished plaster and just go over it one more time. So we stripped the wallpaper from this room, started with raw walls, patched them, then primed them, then painted them. That process took about a week. There you have it. That's plastering an old wall. Remember, when patching or plastering a lath and plaster wall, you've got to layer the plastering. Let the layers dry. That will give you the best effect. It takes some time, but it will be worth the effort. Thank you for joining us. My name is Ron. Jill is my partner, and we are House Love. Good luck with your project.
It's a wonderful world. I'm just walking on air. It's a wonderful world. I've got more than my share. Baby, I must be lucky through